Good afternoon, my sisters. Hope each and every one of you are doing well. Remember that God is still in control. I have to say that for me, this past week has been a bit difficult. This past week, I was notified that a person whom I love very much has gone to be with the Lord. I've had my days of crying and confusion. In the flesh, I want to question God and demand an explanation, a lot, a lot like Habakkuk did in his time of anguish. But in the spirit, I know that God is in control and that his plan is perfect. So even though my heart is torn to pieces, I will trust in him. May my dear and loving friend Sarai Garcia rest in peace, and may her family find peace and comfort in God's arms. We have been studying the book of Habakkuk, but today we are going to put a pause on the book of Habakkuk, and I am going to share with you something that the Lord has put in my heart. As we approached our 40 days of craziness and panic with this COVID-19, I was reminded that God is still in control. God speaks to us through many sources. It could be a prayer, the word, a song, a devotional, a family member or friend, a brother or sister in Christ, our pastors, a dream, a memory, a movie, and so on. He speaks to us through so many different venues and so many different ways. So last week, one of my devotionals was on Noah and the floodwaters, and it made me think of the floodwaters we have been facing this past month. For Noah and his family, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but their isolation didn't end there. It continued for many months. Noah and his family had to shelter in place for a long time. Hidalgo County issued a shelter in place on March 26, 2020, and as we came to the 40th day of shelter in place on Monday, May 4th, I was surprised as I read my devotional about Noah and the floodwaters. As soon as I finished reading my devotional, the Holy Spirit guided me to share this one with you. Maybe some of you already read it, but I will be obedient and share what the Lord has put in my heart. Today we will be spending some time in the book of Genesis. Together we will learn about Noah's floodwaters and how we can learn from them. So join me in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 7, verses 1 through 12. We're going to begin there, verses 1 through 12. To see what the Word of God says. 7:1 says, The Lord then said to Noah, Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate. Verse 3. And also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came on the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and of all creatures that moved along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days, the flood waters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Just as this virus is flooding our lives now more than 40 days, God has a plan and a purpose for us too. So go with me to Genesis 7, verse 17. We're going to continue. We're just going to skip down to verse 17. Chapter 7, verse 17 says, For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. Verse 20. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every little thing that moved on the land perished. birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swam over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that moved along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. 150 days, it says here. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but that was just the beginning of what Noah and his family had to endure. The worst was yet to come. As we deal with this virus, think about it. Are the 40 days our worst? Are these 40 days that we've come to, are they our worst? Not by a chance, I don't think. There will be a second wave and maybe even a third wave that will come, and we need to be prepared. We need to remain safe. We might be facing the worst, just like Noah was. I think it will all depend on us, on all of us, and the decisions that we make. So in Noah's time, God had a plan. God had a mission for Noah and his family. He wanted them to do something. And because he found him righteous during that generation, he had a mission for him to do. God chose Noah because he was righteous in his generation. God asked Noah to get in the ark with the animals. 7 days later, the springs of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of heavens were opened. The rain fell on earth for 40 days and 40 nights. All the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. Every living thing that moved on land perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, and all the creatures that swam over the earth, and all mankind. Everything perished. Everything on dry land that had breath of life in its nostrils died. Humans, everything died. Now the only thing left is in the ark. It's full of animals and Noah and his family. That's the only thing that survived the flood waters. This was God's plan during Noah's time. And this is how the flood waters looked for Noah, and this is how it looks for us today. Looking back in this past months, we can see how COVID-19 has turned and tossed our normal, just like Noah's time. The waves of this virus has been strong, and we find ourselves in the ark, sheltered in place. There is where God kept Noah safe, and this is where God is trying to keep us safe, sheltered in our own homes. Our own homes are our own ark. The waves of the floodwaters began. It started with the news of an outbreak in China and spreading. And then the death tolls rise quickly in Italy. It had spread from China, now it's in Italy, and all these things are happening. And then we started hearing that the pleas to wash our hands and not to touch our face, the toilet paper and the water craziness. Passengers were stuck in cruise ships with numbers of infected people increasing every day. COVID-19 spreads quickly through New York. No room at the morgues. States and their cities started implementing plans to shut down. Panic over shortage of hospital rooms, respirators, and masks ran across our nation. Medical providers are working endlessly to help people survive. Grocery store shelves are empty. Hygiene items are hard to get. Store managers trying to keep order in their stores. Health providers and businesses trying to figure out how to continue with services. Schools and churches shut down and online classes begin. A week later, Judge Cortez ordered a shelter-in-place for Hidalgo County. Small businesses suffer. Lots of people lose their jobs. Hidalgo County reports new cases of coronaviruses every day. Social distances and curfews are put into place. 24-hour curfews for residents under the age of 17 go into effect. Face masks become mandatory. Only 1 to 2 people in vehicles traveling for essentials. Nation and states are suffering. Thousands of people are unemployed. Pandemic has hit our country hard. has hit our economy hard. On April 27th, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott issued additional executive orders to continue the process of reopening the state of Texas. Ready or not, we are opening. Meanwhile, the number of those infected with the virus continues to rise. Recommendations to stay home, be safe, and go out only if you really need are still in place. These are the floodwaters we are facing today. But still yet, it doesn't compare to Noah. Noah had to face the possibility of completely running out of food for them and for the animals. They were stuck in the ark floating in high waters. They had no stores to run to or neighbors to help them if they ran out of something. They couldn't leave the ark and go cut grass for the animals or to look for more plants for the animals or even to look for trees with fruits for themselves or vegetation. It was all gone. The earth had perished. They are in the ark full of animals, and they are not even allowed to use the animals as food. God had not given them the animals to eat yet. And even if he had, think about it. What would have happened if they ate the only female pig in the ark? Remember, there were two of each animals, male and female. There would no longer be a mate for the male pig. How crazy is that? But God had a purpose. Go with me to Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 27 to 31. And let's see what God does on the sixth day of creation. I see God's plan in action for Noah's days, way back in day 6 of creation. If you go with me to Genesis 1:27, we will be able to see what I'm talking about. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw that all he had made, and it was very good. And there was the evening, and there was the morning of the 6th day. See, God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Man and woman were created to be above the animals. He had given all the fruits and the vegetables as food to Adam and Eve. He told them in verse 29, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit and seed in it. They will be yours for food." So what he's given them here is the fruits, the vegetables, says every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has a fruit or has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. He didn't say, "I'm giving you the animals, I'm giving you meat, he's giving them fruits and vegetables. That's what he's giving them. And to the animals, he said, he has given them every green plant for food. You continue reading on verse 29, it says, "And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that moved along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant." He gave the animals green plants. La hierba, the weeds. It says, at this point, during the time of Noah, the animals were not given as food. People before the flood were vegetarians. They ate fruits and vegetables. It wasn't until after the flood that God gives them the animals for food. So killing the animals for food was not even a choice at this point. Now go with me to Genesis 9, verse 1, all the way through verse 3. This is after the flood waters reside. chapter 9, verse 1. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. That's the same thing he told Adam and Eve on day 6. He told them, be fruitful and fill the earth. Listen closely to what God tells them next. The fear and dread of you will fall on the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky, on every creature that moves along the ground and all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. That word now, that I now give you everything. Just as I had given you the fruits and vegetables before, I now give you everything that lives and moves about the earth. I now give you everything. Let's read that one more time. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. God always has a purpose. It is not until after the flood that God added the animals to the food supply for mankind. He knew that the vegetation was going to take a while to grow and that it would be difficult for them to find tree-bearing fruits and veggies. So he changed the plan a little. He added meat to their food choices. And as I've always said, God has a perfect plan. He's always looking at the big picture, always working behind the scenes. Why is it that in day 6 he doesn't add the animals? Why does he only give them plants and vegetables? Because he had a plan, because it's perfect. He knew that later on he was going to have to use the animals, so he was holding off to that. That's what I believe. I probably sound like a broken record saying the same thing over and over again, but it's the truth. His plans are perfect and with a purpose. So now I want to share with you my devotional, so all of this can make sense to you, because you're probably thinking, why is she telling us all this? And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because when I read this devotional, it made me think about how Noah was feeling and how we're feeling sheltered in place. We're feeling desperate. We're feeling like we want to get out of the house already. We want to go and do things. We want to go and see friends. We want to go see our families. We want to go hug somebody. But when I read this this devotional, I kind of felt how selfish we are, how selfish we can be. And so the title of the devotional that I read was "In Floodwaters, Ask God for an Olive Leaf." Noah was awakened not by crowing roosters, but by the squawking of those pesky peacocks. He fed the fowls, if for no other reason than to shut them out. Then he spent a good 20 minutes shoveling out the elephant and the rhino stalls. Lord knows if it weren't for the vast floods outside the ark, he'd never be able to tolerate the vile smells inside. He stared out one of the ark's windows. Same view as the day before, water in every direction, all the way to the horizon. After the 40-day flood, he and his family had been floating for months in their maritime zoo. They'd battled claustrophobia, sickness, and stir craziness. Suddenly, the giant boat scraped to a stop. Noah thought to himself, solid ground? The waters must be receding. Noah waited a few days and then released a dove. So after even when the boat stopped, he waited a few days, it says here. He waited a few days. And then he released a dove, but the dove couldn't find nowhere to perch, and it returned. And you can find this in Genesis 8:9. It says, but the dove couldn't find nowhere to perch because there was water all over the surface of the earth, so it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. It says a week later, he tried it again. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. And you'll find this on Genesis 8:11. It says, when the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth. That little olive sprig was far more than just foliage. It represented hope for Noah. It was hope. It was proof to Noah that God was working and that his purpose would come to pass. So when Noah saw that little green leaf in the beak of that dove, he automatically had hope that God was working, that his plan was going to be fulfilled. Noah's olive leaf reminds us of the world's floodwaters, that the world's floodwaters do eventually subside, that God is working on a plan, and that it too shall pass. Besides the COVID-19, what are your floodwaters surrounding you today? What other things are surrounding you today besides the virus that we're confronted with? What else is in your life? What are your floodwaters? Is it loneliness, depression, a limping marriage, wayward children? Maybe you stare at your bleak horizon and feel like you are destined to float over forever in an endless sea of medical bills, uh, financial instability, or whatever you're going through right now, whatever season you're in. You see yourself there and that you're never going to be able to go out. And if you're feeling like this, ask God for an olive leaf. It's it 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 likely won't be an immediate solution to your problems or to your situation. It wasn't for Noah. When he saw that little olive leaf, it wasn't a solution to his problem to being in that ark for so many days. He still had plenty of days ahead on the ark. However, the olive leaf will bring immediate encouragement and hope. If you look at Genesis 8:12 through 14, it says he waited 7 more days. Even after he saw that little dove with a leaf in his beak, he waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again. But this time it did not return to him. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the waters had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. Noah was 101 years old. When he went into the ark, he was 100 years old. So somewhere in that time, he had a birthday in the ark. He had to celebrate his birthday in the ark. By the time he got off the ark, he was 101 years old already. It says olive leaves or hope can come in all sizes and forms. Timely phone calls from friends, reassuring Bible promises, encouraging news, unexpected shifts in circumstances, and sharing your olive leaf with other people can bring hope to them too. And it could serve them so they could find hope in their own situation, in their own season in life. As we read, see that Noah was wise. We can see that Noah was wise. He used his wisdom and he waited longer in the ark. He didn't rush out as soon as the dove returned with the olive leaf in his beak. He waited until it was safe, until the earth was completely dry. But that olive leaf represented hope for Noah and for his family. I'm sure that he was ready to run out and that he wanted to get away from all those animals, from the smell, from the labor, and from the frustrations of that it all brought. But he waited. He waited on God's promise. He waited on God's timing. How are you reacting during these floodwaters? Just because the governor is ready to reopen the state of Texas, are you ready to run out into the crowds and put yourself and your family at risk? I'm not here to judge anyone, but I ask you to be more like Noah. Be wise in the decisions you make. Think about everyone that will be affected by those decisions. Hold on to an olive leaf. Hold on to hope. Things will get better. Yes, we're all feeling the frustrations of being sheltered in place, and we have all been affected by this virus in one way or another. But this too shall pass. God's plan will be fulfilled. The floodwaters will recede. God provided for Noah and his family. God had a plan and a purpose for them. He will provide for you too. He has a purpose and a plan. If you don't need to go out, wait. Noah did. He waited until it was safe. For those of you who really need to go out, you need to go out to work, or you need to go out for whatever reason that you really need to go out, we will be praying for you. I understand that some of us may need to go out. I just ask that you take all the precautionary measures to make sure that you and your family are safe. May the Lord build a hedge of protection around you and keep you safe. These are different floodwaters, but the same God in control. The same God of Noah is the same God of us for us today. God doesn't change. Different floodwaters, but the same God in control. What can we learn from Noah? What can we take from all this? Noah was wise and he rested in God's promises. That's one thing that we can learn. And we must also do the same. Noah's God is the same God as ours. God does not change. If he took care of Noah, he will take care of us too. But we need to wait on him. We need to be wise like Noah was wise. Although we don't understand why all this is happening, we can live confident that God is in control. And we can have hope that he is in control. We see God's purposes that we will see his purposes fulfilled. We must do our part so that we don't interfere with God's purposes in our lives. All this reminds me of what Habakkuk tells God in his conversation with him. This took me back to Habakkuk 1:12, when he said, "You, Lord, have existed from eternity. You, my holy God, are immortal. You, Lord, have put them," or he was talking about the Babylonians, "you have put them to do justice. You, my rock, have put them," the Babylonians, "to execute your punishment. In your eyes you are pure, and you cannot see evil. You cannot contemplate suffering." In the time of Habakkuk, it was Judah's disobedience, and God sent judgment. Who tells us that God is not doing something similar today? This is something to think about. Different waters, different flood waters, same God. Remember that. We're going through different flood waters than Noah did, but we still are serving the same God as Noah did. Thank you for being with us today, and may God continue to bless you. Hope you enjoyed today's Bible study. Remember, when you find yourself in floodwaters, ask God for an olive leaf, for a hint of hope. See you next week as we return to the study of Habakkuk. God bless you, my sisters, and thank you for being with us today. Goodbye.